What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down some big news that came out involving Tesla and President Trump, as he said some things that caused the whole market to explode. And this is also giving Tesla an extra boost. I'll also break down all the charts, but just know that I'm not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. Deposits $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on invested cash. The offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with this market. So, as far as Tesla's going, we got this nice gap up in the morning. I mentioned that as long as we're above 255, we're favoring 262, then 275 as our targets. We ended up going up to 275 after a couple of hours. And I made another video and said that our next target is going to be between that 280 and 282 area, which is where Tesla went to today. So the question is, what's going to happen? I do want to note that Tesla has some tough resistance near 280, which is where we saw some chop before. But then ultimately, like I said before, if we break this, we're looking for this imbalance up here to fill, taking us up to the psychological 300. So yes, there's a lot more room for upside for Tesla, despite the fact that we're at this resistance. So I'll talk more about the charts in just a couple of minutes. I believe it's very important for me to go over the news and what President Trump said because it's affecting Tesla. So Tesla had two good pieces of news come out. We saw Tesla run like crazy because lots of reports are suggesting that the company is planning to roll out its FSD, full self-driving, highest level advanced driver assistance software in China. This update is very, very big, showing lots of meaningful progress when it comes to gaining the regulatory approval to get this out there. This also opens the doors for the possibility of them launching FSD to a larger extent, which allows for them to collect more data, then eventually and potentially even get a robotaxi over there. But the thing about that is that there's no guarantees yet. We need to see how things end up going with regulations. We have to see how things go with that and how well Tesla starts to improve their software, at least over there, because the streets do tend to be very different. But nonetheless, there's a lot of improvements being made. We're seeing them growing like crazy, and this was a huge piece of news. This was the first piece, because the first good piece of news, excuse me. The second good piece of news comes right over here. So there's been some news that the FBI has created a task force to investigate and apprehend individuals behind attacks against Tesla, Tesla's vehicles, charging stations, and etc. This is some huge news. Why is this so important? Well, let's be real, guys. Elon Musk is involved in politics. So, of course, this gives Tesla a better edge when it comes to getting protections, getting the FBI involved, and etc. So, keep that in mind. That's very, very awesome. This is going to help them in a lot of different ways because I saw lots of reports coming out that the vandalism is continuing in different showrooms. And this will help Tesla to really offset that. So, I think that's a good piece of news. This is good for them as well. And also, we've been seeing bad news still coming out about how many European competitors are doing better in terms of sales in Europe in the month of February. But keep in mind that much of that news has been priced in, which is what I was talking about in my previous videos, right? The news has been essentially priced in. Tesla priced in a lot of this news. That's why it's trying to make higher lows. And so far, if we already priced in much of the news, the next direction is going to be up for some temporary relief, which is what Tesla is due for. That's what's happening so far. So good for Tesla. We're running so much. There was another factor that helped Tesla run, and that's the overall market, right? We saw the QQQ running. We saw the NASDAQ, ES, SPX, SPY, they're all running to the upside. We saw Nvidia and tech in the green. We saw Amazon and retail pumping. Finance was in the green. Consumer durables were in the green. And Tesla's up 12%. Let's go, guys. Very, very awesome day. So why is the market so green? It also has to do with President Trump as he made some very important announcements. The first thing, this is all over the news. President Trump basically has made it clear that his tariffs may not be as stringent as before. Many sources are saying that Trump's reciprocal tariffs for April 2nd are expected to be more narrow than before, right? That's some very, very big news. It will be affecting Tesla and etc. President Trump is no longer expected to impose sector-specific tariffs on April 2nd, according to the Wall Street Journal. And that's some huge news because they may omit those industry-specific tariffs. And those sector-specific tariffs, however, are likely to not be announced on April 2nd. So that's huge news. There's also news about how some Russian and U.S. delegations are preparing a joint statement. And then we have more news involving what President Trump is announcing. So I'm going to actually talk about a lot of these in a lot more detail. So I'm going to actually pull up President Trump's transcript and then read what he's been saying. So just give me 1 second, guys. So with the way Donald Trump is saying things, he's actually changing his tonality a bit. So I'm going to pull up my phone and his quotes. Trump said, and I quote, I suspect investments from tariffs and election results. Trump said money is pouring into the USA. We want to keep it that way. So that's what Trump is saying. Then President Trump mentioned that he suspects investments from tariffs and election results to continue as time goes on. And we're seeing the perfect example of that. Trump said that Hyundai is making investments, and it's very, very clear that the tariffs are working. Hyundai will not have to pay any tariffs by investing in the USA. Trump said that the Hyundai plants will produce more than 2.7 million metric tons of steel per year, and they're also increasing their auto manufacturing in Georgia too. Also, the CEO of Hyundai confirmed that $6 billion worth of investments are going to be made into U.S. steel supplies and $21 billion worth of new investments over the next 4 years. So that's what the news is saying so far. Also, there's some details here. Let me just find this. I have it right here. Trump also announced that Hyundai is going to be building about $5.8 billion worth of steel plants, at least in Louisiana, also parts of Georgia. And they're creating nearly 1,500 new jobs. That's a part of their plan to invest over $20 billion into the US. Hyundai and Trump have both confirmed this. And then I have even more quotes from him. I just want to read them to you because it's very important. Moving forward, Trump said that I may give a lot of countries breaks on tariffs. That's a big change in his tonality. Instead of saying he wants to double down on tariffs, give a 200% tariff on this country, he's now saying he wants to give some breaks. So that's what Trump said. He said that I will announce additional tariffs over the next couple of days on autos, lumber, and chips. I will be announcing additional tariffs over the next couple of days. And then he said that I will probably announce automotive tariffs over the next few days. He said that 3 times. And he said tariffs for doing business with Venezuela will be on top of existing ones. And then he said not all tariffs will be included on April 2nd. So the last thing he said is that we've made a big deal on rare earths. We're going to be signing a big deal very soon. And then the US Commerce Secretary Lutnick said that April 2nd tariff announcement is going to be the launch of the External Revenue Service. That's how he described it. So huge news so far. So what does this mean? Okay. President Trump, yes, he's going to be announcing more tariffs maybe over the next few days, but the main date is going to be April 2nd, according to him. However, despite that, he's not going to be super, super strict according to what he's saying. He's saying that his announcements may be more narrow, and there could be some breaks coming from many of these different countries, right? He's going to give them some breaks, maybe exemptions, that's to be determined, but that is some huge news. So a big change in tonality from President Trump, that's helping the market to a large extent, affecting Tesla and other companies like that. So that's part of why Tesla got an extra boost to run higher. That's what the market's trying to run. We had President Trump and a bunch of good news come out specifically for Tesla. That's why the market is running like this. On top of this, it has to do with the options chain. So we're actually above a very, very key level on SPY, above that 565 area. The reason that's important is because of the option expirations. And by closing above that, that does expose us to more gamma because that leads to institutions and the big money players to hedge. They hedge by closing shorts and then buying shares. By buying shares, that pumps stocks a lot higher because it's kind of like a short squeeze, more like a gamma squeeze, I would say, that the market is starting to experience. If we get good closes, especially on Friday, if we keep getting good closes, the market will continue, right? The 0 day to expiration options also affect this. The hedging that's happening in the markets, big players are hedging their positions and pumping the market even higher. That's all you need to really know. That's part of the reason why the market's running. So, anyways, tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, March 25th. Please keep in mind at 9 o'clock a.m., we have the housing price index, which is quite minor, but 10 a.m. is when we have some big data. So 30 minutes after the stock market opens, we have the consumer confidence reports, new home sales, and the Richmond Fed manufacturing index, shipments, and revenue services. So keep that all in mind. Lots of volatility to be expected at 10 o'clock a.m. And then we have some earnings. It's all very minor, just lots of retail like GameStop, Chewy, Dollar Tree, and that's it. Nothing too crazy. Last but not least, the fear and greed index is currently at fear. It used to be at extreme fear, so fear is subsiding just a little bit for the markets. Momentum is still at extreme fear, but it might get closer to just fear as we approach the 125 daily moving average. The put to call option ratio is dipping as we're seeing some puts being closed, and the VIX is dumping, losing its 50 daily moving average, which is a bearish signal for it, which is bullish for stocks. So nonetheless, These are bullish signals. The market's doing a great job. So now let's just focus on the charts. So for the rest of the video, it's just going to be about the charts. Tesla's looking pretty good on the 4-hour time frame, getting a breakout from this bullish wedge. On the daily time frame, I want to mention that Tesla is looking bullish. It does favor 295 to 300 as our target. Still looks very, very strong. As long as we don't lose like 265 and then 258, if we lose those, we could be dipping to fill the gap to 250. Just by the way, that's like the bearish case, which is very unlikely. I'm always going to be open minded just to give you guys a comprehensive analysis, but we're bullish nonetheless. So we're bullish, okay? Nonetheless, we're bullish. Now we're at this 280 area. If we hold above 280, I think that we could be looking for that 295 target to 300, back up towards this resistance up here. That's going to be our next potential target if we push even higher. If Tesla ends up failing, if we end up losing 274 or so, we could be retesting around this 265 area, and then we'll see what kind of reaction we get. Those are the bullish and bearish cases. So lose 274, and I could be looking for Tesla to dip towards the 260s all the way down to 265. If we hold above 282, we're looking for an attempt to slowly uptrend for 300. So watch those levels very closely. 295 to 300 could be the next target if we hold above 282. What do I think is going to happen, though? What is my prediction? Well, to me, if you ignore the lines, this looks like a slanted inverse head and shoulders and an accumulation, and the target would be all the way up towards 300, which is where this imbalance is up here. So what I think is going to happen is that we have a tough resistance over here at 280. We might see a little bit of a shuffle at first. Notice that the last time we hit 280 right here, we hit this shuffle in the beginning. So we could see a little shuffle. That would be completely healthy to cool off a bit, between 275 to 280, just a bit of a shuffle. And then hold above 282, and I think we launch for an attempt to get to 300. We're going to attempt to try to break this resistance at this yellow trend line. It's not going to be a confirmed break until we see the weekly, so be careful around 300. And keep in mind that there have been times where we get a little bit above the yellow trend line only to reject off of it. So this big yellow trend line is the resistance to watch for, but there's a good chance we're going to be trying to test it at the very least, if not try to break it. So I do see us going even higher. For the short term, we might consolidate a little bit over here between 280 and 275, but then there should be some kind of breakout coming either tomorrow or a little bit later by Wednesday to push for that 295 to 300 target. And then we'll see if we can hold above this yellow trend line or not. If we don't hold 300, if we get a rejection, we could come back down into the trend line. That could be a rejection. We'll see about that, but we're not ready yet for that. We still look bullish, so I do think we favor a push for the 290s and eventually 295 to 300. So look for some consolidation tomorrow morning, then an attempt to go higher. Tesla's very strong on the daily. Good volume is coming in. I think the market's going to help it. We look quite good. Overall, great move by Tesla. On SPY, we have a bullish wedge that's forming, a nice inverse head and shoulders accumulation pattern. Pretty good so far. However, I need to see it hold above 575 to continue for 580, then 584 is our targets. Now, if we lose 568, we're looking for a dip back down to test the trend line near 565. If we hold above 575, we're looking for an attempt to push for the 580s. My gut feeling is that it's going to be a mix of both, where we hit 575 first. Maybe we dip a little bit towards like the 570 range, kind of consolidate, but then eventually we get bought back up and start pushing for the 580s, for 580 plus. I favor this as the most likely possibility. We'll see how low we go. Do we go a little bit deeper, or do we just see a small pullback before it starts to pump? Overall, it looks bullish as long as it's above this yellow trend line. We still look bullish, especially when you look on the daily on SPY. It's looking more bullish. Could consolidate a bit right over here around 575 to 570 before it starts pushing for the 580s. Bullish on the daily, looks quite good. On the QQQ, it looks bullish as long as you're above 490. We're favoring 492, then 500 as our potential targets. We look bullish on the triple Q. On the 4-hour time frame, we're looking bullish as well. I say this because we're trying to make higher lows right here. So notice that we are making higher lows over and over again. Now, 492 is going to be a tough area, 492 to 490. So we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get initially. Okay. If we break 492, I think we push closer to 500. 495 to 500 is going to be our target. If we lose 484 to 485, we could be dumping back down towards this 480 area. Okay, so watch those levels just to be safe. But as long as we're above this yellow trend line here, we're bullish. What do I think is going to happen now? Okay, I gave you guys the bullish and bearish cases. My prediction is we see a little bit of a dip here. We kind of consolidate first, but then we eventually push for 492 to 495, all the way up to 500. So I do favor the upwards direction. For the IWM Russell 2000, we have an inverse head and shoulders like pattern. As long as we don't lose 205, we're looking for a push back up towards this 212 area. So I think we're doing a good job so far. And I also want to mention that we're doing quite good with this inverse head and shoulders. So this is like an accumulation right here. And this would take us up towards that like 215 target. Sorry about this. I need to draw this a little bit longer. That's like the inverse head and shoulders. If we lose 205, it's going to be a bad sign. But as long as we're above that, we're favoring a push for 215. Might dip a bit back down to 207 before it tries to break out. So it looks quite good. For ES, we look bullish. If we end up losing 57.75, we could be tipping to about 57.50. If we lose that, we turn more bearish. As long as we're above 5,800, we could continue to push back up to about 58.50, then eventually 58.75. My guts tells me there's an inverse head and shoulders here. Could be a small pullback towards the 5780 to 5800 area. And then eventually it might continue to push for the 5850. So it still looks more bullish. We'll see if we get a small pullback first. Okay. So be careful. As long as you don't lose 5750, we're going to be fine. And then we should be looking for a bullish continuation into the 5800s. Okay. NQ looks pretty good. Bullish wedge right here. There's a nice wedge. If we lose 20,400, if we don't hold that, we could be dipping. If we break that, we're looking for an attempt to go higher. My gut tells me we kind of dip like this, then we continue to push for the 20,600s. Before that happens, though, we might pull back a little bit. We could retest 20,200 or so before it tries to bounce. But nonetheless, the charts look bullish, especially with all the hype involving President Trump being a bit more flexible. For Bitcoin, we're bullish. I think that this is favoring 90,000 as a potential target to form an accumulation. However, we'll see if we could hold 85,000 first before it tries to continue to uptrend like this towards 90,000. If 85,000 breaks, we could turn back down, but we're overall uptrending. We could be looking for 90,000 as our target. For Nvda, we're looking quite good. We're looking for an inverse head and shoulders right here. We have a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. If we continue to break out, I'm looking for 125 as our target, so long as 118 does not fail us. So this is looking quite good. I think that it's possible we retest like 120 or so. As long as 118 does not break, we're going to be fine. 117.5 to be more precise. As long as that doesn't break, we're going to be fine. And then I do see us eventually pushing for the 125s. Might see a small dip to like 120 before it bounces for 125, but it looks bullish nonetheless. Once again, Tesla's looking good. As long as we're above 280, we're bullish. We could see a little bit of consolidation here before it starts to break out higher, but I still think it's bullish overall, especially if we hold above 282 to push for the 290s and eventually 300. For Aapl, we have a nice bullish divergence, double bottom here. As long as we're above 220, we're favoring 225. If we lose 217, we could turn back down to 215, but this is looking more bullish nonetheless. For Netflix, we're looking bullish. We're making higher lows right here. We have this imbalance over here around this 980 to 1,000 area. If we lose 950, we could turn back down, but overall, we're making higher lows. So I think we continue to uptrend for 990 to 1,000. For MSCR, we look bullish. We're making higher lows right now, doing a great job. I just don't want to see us lose essentially 320 to start dipping to fill that gap around 304. As long as we're above that, we're still favoring like we could go a little higher for like the 340 area. So far, it's bullish. For Celsius, I'm going to be careful with this. It has a nice structure. It's bullish, but be careful around the 35s. This is where we have this wick here. It's kind of tough. We'll see if we break that or not, but overall, it's doing a good job. Supermicro is looking decent. We have a nice accumulation right here. We're trying to ride this trend line. Looks quite good. As long as we ride this up, we're going to continue to uptrend for the 45 plus area. If we lose the trend line, we could be jumping back down to 38. So it's holding this trend line. As long as it holds, we could be pushing for 45 plus. For Palantir, we're making an inverse head and shoulders, a left shoulder, head, and then a right shoulder. We could be trying to push for 100 right here. As long as we don't lose this trend line, I think we're looking good. So great job by Palantir and its counterparts. Rivian looks bullish as long as we don't lose 12.07. We're favoring 12.5. We could retest the low 12s before it tries to bounce for 12.5, so it's looking quite good. For SoFi, we have 13.8 as resistance. If that breaks, we're looking for 14.4. If we end up losing 13 flat, we could be looking for that gap fill. My gut tells me we could be looking for more upside for the 14s. We could dip a little bit, retest 13.5 before we continue to push for this imbalance around 14.4. There's going to be tough resistance at 13.84. We'll see if we break that. I think that we're going to test it, consolidate, and eventually break it. AMD surpassed my 110 targets. We could be looking for 116 as our next target, so we'll see if we go higher. ARM is looking more bullish. We have an inverse head and shoulders here. Looks pretty good. As long as we don't lose 121, we're favoring an attempt to get back up for like 125. So look for a dip towards 122, then a bounce for 125 plus. We look pretty good. For coin, I'm in the middle with Coinbase. I'm a little concerned about one thing. There's a big gap below and a big gap above. As long as we're above 200, though, we are favoring. We want to push for 212. If we can't hold 200, though, we could be dipping back down to 195. If that fails us, we fill the gap to 190. Could go either way, but the chart is favoring the upwards direction for 214. For Amazon, we look bullish. Nice accumulation with the double bottom. As long as it does not lose 199, we're favoring a push for 208. It looks pretty good so far. For Meta, as long as we don't lose 609, we're favoring a push for 625. Looks pretty good. For Microsoft, it's not looking as great. It might retest 390 to 388 before it tries to bounce. Overall, good structure. Google looks pretty good as long as we don't lose 168. We're favoring 172 as a potential target. I just want to see it hold 168 for confirmation, but it looks good. GameStop could be looking for 26.5 to 27. Looks pretty good with this inverse head and shoulders. AMC looks decent. It could slowly uptrend for 3.2. DJT could be looking for 23 as our potential target. Looks pretty good as well. The VIX is bearish, head and shoulders continuing to dump. There's an imbalance down here around 16 flat, so it could be dipping to the 16s. Looks bearish for now. The 10 years bullish, and so is the dollar. It's not really affecting the market as much as usual, though, so don't worry about that. For now, the market's looking bullish, and so is Tesla. Be careful at this 280 area. There could be some consolidation for now, but then after, whether it takes a day, whether it takes a few hours, it will eventually start pushing for 300. I do think it looks bullish. I think Tesla's looking for a temporary relief rally for now, and we're just going to follow the trend for the time being. So we look bullish. Watch the supports I have marked here, and we'll see how it goes. I thank you all so much for listening, guys. Have a good night. I'll see you guys tomorrow before market open. Until then, have a good one, and peace out.